So we've done away with the Texas
You told me
sound.
to. You told me to.
I only suggested because we give the horns up goofballs too much run by using that sound. Horns down. Every
Horns
show.
down. Every show. Let me say this before we get rolling into this. Saturday, I told you before this blew up that this was coming about Will Levis. Your boy wasn't wrong, because now Ian Rappaport this morning and today is reporting the same thing that we had reported on Saturday. Let me clarify one thing.
Yeah.
I said top 5 pick. What I should have said was a top 10 pick. But
I think realistically, though, I don't think
it's happening in the top 5. Okay. So if they need a quarterback outside of Carolina, everything's on the table. I think that everybody knows that they're going with CJ Stroud, which as a Saints fan makes me feel a lot better. I don't want to see Bryce Young anymore. Okay. Will Levis, I'm just going to tell you, is here's where he's beating Bryce Young. You ready? The interview room. That is 1,000% where
Levis is winning in the interview room, you're saying.
Not winning. He's LSU versus Iowa dominating. That's how much I'm hearing that he's separating himself. So just to clarify on the news that we talked about last Saturday, y'all can go listen to that show after this. Joe, let's start off with this. So we're going to talk about USC and Oregon in just a minute. But you had an interesting thing that was going on with USC and a recruit that I want you to get to, but I also want to break down USC as well. So go ahead and get to the recruit. And I think what we're going to do here is show the changes that Lincoln, look, we've poo-pooed on Lincoln Riley a lot on this show. At least I have.
And we will continue to poo-poo on Lincoln Riley on this show.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that. What I will say is that they are getting better from what they were, okay? I don't think that you can say that they're not getting better from the Clay Helton era. But what's this interesting thing that you have about the recruit and what's going on there before we start breaking down some USC?
So the headline, what spurred the discussion of talking about USC, is that they signed the last remaining top recruit in the 2023 recruiting cycle. If you happen to miss it over the weekend, Deuce Robinson, who was the #1 tight end recruit, is considered to be one of the most talented tight end recruits to come out in the past decade. He is an extremely, extremely explosive athlete. Very good football player. I implore anyone to go check out his highlights because he's really, really fun to watch. He was testing the waters for the MLB. He wanted to see if that was a possibility. It seems like the feedback was not positive enough, so he decided he wants to play college football, and he picked USC, which was a little bit of the expected outcome here. Mm-hmm. What I get from this and my takeaways from this is that this doesn't really mean anything for me for USC. It's great that they added the kid, and the kid's very, very, very talented, and it's going to be another big explosive first-round pick that comes out of USC's offense.
Oh, you really think he could be a first-round pick as a tight end?
He's got all the tools, and I think that plus athletes and tight end
too now.
Right. As long as your head's on straight, if you have all the tools and you're a plus athlete, it's not hard to become a first-round pick as a tight end. It's very hard to put together kids like Deuce Robinson. But where I'm like, this doesn't mean anything for me is that USC, and I have continued to harp on this, doesn't recruit outside of offensive weapons and quarterback. I don't care. I want more of a commitment to the defensive side of the football. And until you show a commitment to the defensive side of the ball in your recruiting, I know they got some guys in the portal, they're going to continue to do the same crap that they did last year. This is Oklahoma West. Stinkin' Riley's not winning any more games than he did last year against teams like Oregon, who bolstered their defense. And then when they jump to the Big Ten, they're going to continue to get beat by teams that actually have really good defenses, like Michigan, like Ohio State, like Iowa, all Wisconsin. It is going to be tough sledding for them if they can't figure that stuff out.
All right. So I agree with so let me preface my thought about USC. So I'm glad that they're getting recruits. I think here's my opinion. When USC is good, that means that college football is going to be good as well. I don't think that, and Joe, I know that you don't like USC as much as I don't really like Texas. Like your Texas is, or your USC is my Texas, I guess I should say, or Alabama, whichever one, doesn't matter. Pick one, flip a coin. I agree with you, but also disagree with you, okay? I agree that defensively they have to get better. Lincoln has taken the same blueprint that he had at Oklahoma and implanting it at USC. Here's the difference for me. I think Lincoln Riley learned something. You ready? He is beefing up front, not on just the offensive line, but defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
They went and got Ethan White from Florida. They went and got Michael Torquin from Florida, both interior and interior offensive lineman and tackle. Anthony Lucas is a guy that when he went in the portal, I really wanted LSU to go after. He goes to USC, but it's not enough. They did have a really good recruiting class, but the two headliners of their class, Zachariah Branch, who could play corner or wide receiver, doesn't really matter, and Malachi Nelson, who's going to be a really damn good quarterback. Here's the problem that I have with USC and will continue to have with Lincoln Riley in general. Joe, here's the stats. They were 106 in total defense, 109th on third down defense, and you know how massive I look at that stat on third down. Here's where it's incredulous to me. It's not as if USC was playing juggernaut offenses. Utah might be the best offense you played, and they are not an explosive offense.
Besides Dalton Kincaid, find me one guy on there that's getting drafted earlier than the third round. It's not happening. Utah doesn't have any athletes, to your point. They're not facing anyone explosive.
I think UCLA does have some guys that could possibly sneak in. Okay, but
Charbonnet is a good football player.
Charbonnet is you're right. But regardless of that, UCLA still scored a crap load and had a crap load of yards on them. Joe, this is where Alex Grinch not only deserves to be fired, where he should have been fired. At Oklahoma, I can understand it to some extent. Here's why. Because they don't have the in-state recruiting that some states have. But he goes to California. He goes to the portal. Joe, they were 80th in rush defense, 112th in passing yards allowed in a system where a lot of the great teams that you're playing don't throw the football. Tulane was a great example of what we will call an underperforming type of school majority of the time, and a mid-major taking it to USC. Joe, if they don't get better defensively, it doesn't matter who paints their nails at USC. They're not winning a damn thing. And if they think that they're going to get them playoff with that defense, they might. You know what, Joe? They might, because their offense is going to be so explosive, might be able to outscore everybody to get to a playoff. But once they get in, once everything has been written, this year and next, they are going to get absolutely slaughtered. You know what? The last time that they went to a playoff game with these almost exact same statistics, you want to know the team that they played in the playoff was Joe Burrow and the LSU team. Then you can turn a couple years before that with Baker Mayfield in the game. Georgia, of all teams. Georgia with Jake from State Farm. Okay, Jake from State Farm literally was lighting them up to play, and then they would go on to play as a freshman.
Yes.
I just don't get the hype behind Lincoln Riley when he allows this bad of defense. I don't get it.
That's the step further that I take this. So, my opening statement here is they're going to go play in the Big Ten, and they've got one more year in the Pac-12.
Good luck.
But let's take it a step further than that. Say things go really well, and you win all those football games. You have to build a team to compete with SEC teams if you want to win a national championship. Plain and simple. That's the only way that you win a national championship. Forget about winning your conference. That's all fine and dandy if you do, but you need to be able to compete in the playoff, as you just said, against teams like LSU and Georgia when you face them. And they have both instances for when he was at Oklahoma were slaughtered, completely slaughtered. And he, in those instances, did not recruit defensive talent effectively. Most of those defensive players, very few of them went on to be high draft picks. Very few of them were highly recruited kids. And he's doing the same damn thing at USC. I don't understand why that isn't a massive red flag. That needs to be brought up as a red flag. It's not going to just get fixed with Alex Grinch, who's already a bad defensive coordinator. It's not just going to get quickly resolved. this requires efforts to go and get those 5-star defensive backs, those 5-star linebackers, those 5-star defensive linemen. My biggest issue, and I've also brought this up, is that you talked about how they have all these recruits in their backyard. Mateo Uyunglele decided to go to Oregon, and he goes to school an hour away from you. That's
Right.
a red flag. Why isn't he picking your school? It's nearby. That's a problem. They're not going to fix anything if they don't get those kids.
Yeah, and then I know this wasn't under Lincoln Riley, but who was the kid? The Thibodeau kid, right? Like he went to Oregon.
And he was in LA. He's from Los Angeles.
Right. You have to. And Pete Carroll showed us this with Orgeron, with Kiffin, with Sarkisian. Who name the coach that was under Pete Carroll in those years? This doesn't change no matter the year. You got to lock down your region. You got to lock down LA. Joe, in this past class, they got 10 kids from California. It needs to be 15 at minimum. At minimum. Has to be at least 15, okay?
Yeah.
And then, look, I'm cool with you getting a 5-star wide receiver. I'm cool with you getting a transcendent quarterback that could be in Malachi Nelson. I'm okay with that. You got to win. You win with offensive pieces. Let's not debate that, because the facts are that you need pieces offensively to win. But when you don't get the big beef up front, when you don't go out and get that Angus beef, pause, you're going to lose. And the big thing that all these teams get confused with, okay, the only team outside the SEC that doesn't, that I guess just kind of understands this, maybe two, and we're going to talk about one of them in just a minute. Ohio State understands that you got to win up front. Michigan understands that you got to win up front. And now Oregon, with Dan Lanning, who was in the SEC, understands you got to win up front. Joe, they're not winning those battles. The simple fact that they're 80th in rush defense in the Pac-12 when you could have won your conference, Joe, it could have been with the talent that they're supposed to have and the conference that they're in. Being 80th in run defense is not only bad, it's horrendous. Now, the excuse is going to be, well, it's year one and all this. But I got to stay consistent here. Like Lincoln, like Brian Kelly, like other coaches that have come in.
Yeah.
At this exact moment, Joe, I don't want to hear that you're staying the exact same from one year to the next when a new coach comes in at a massive program like a Notre Dame, like a USC, like an LSU, whatever the school may be, because now you can go portaling. Do you mean to tell me that there wasn't enough defensive players in the portal last year that you couldn't have gone and got gone and to get? I don't believe that, because, Joe, the truth is, if you want to say defensive lineman, okay, maybe you're right there. But you know what? 112th in pass defense is inexcusable when a third of the kids that went in the portal were DBs. It is inexcusable when you don't have the 85 scholarship limit met yet, and you can go get as many kids as you want. I'm not putting all of my chips in on USC. Let me play a little devil's advocate, though. You ready?
Yes.
If Lincoln Riley grows a set of balls and fires Alex Grinch, and he does well on the next hot DC hire, I will tell you this: watch out. The thing that intrigues me the most is if it's like, in a sense, it's like Kirby in a way. When Kirby kind of let the reins go offensively a little bit, look what happened. Okay? When he listened to Todd Monken, what happened? They're back-to-back national title winners. They're beating the dog snot out of Oregon. He's got to let Alex Grinch go. Jim Leonard would have gone to USC if you paid him the right money.
Yeah.
And Jim Leonard not only runs circles around Alex Grinch, when he's running the circles, he's giving them the buzz cut that he loves so much. If I'm a USC fan, which I don't know if there's really that many that's barking things like this, I would be outside of football ops picketing to fire Alex Grinch. He's that bad, Joe. He is that bad of a defensive coordinator. The simple fact that he's still employed is incredulous.
I just don't understand what if you didn't fire him after last year for how it was terrible. It was terrible. You just pointed out all the stats. If you didn't fire him after last year and then what we knew from his past at Oklahoma, what is going to constitute his firing this upcoming season? Because
it's going to take the
realistically, they're going to improve statistically slightly based on the kids that they did add in the portal. They realistically should at least improve slightly. So if Lincoln's giving him all this long leash, is he going to sit there and say, well, you improved statistically, but I still got to get rid of you? He's given him enough fourth, fifth chances that I don't know if he's going to can him. There's too close of a relationship there that is hindering the progress of USC as a program.
I don't know. I remember Lincoln Riley's opening press conference, and he talked about Alex Grinch, and Alex Grinch, they were third in the nation in sacks. Mm-hmm. No, he didn't put that together. Jamar Cain did. My whole point in all of this is, you can have any quarterback on God's given earth, and look, with it being said, I don't think it is a hot take to say that Lincoln Riley is the best quarterback developer that we have in college football. You know how I know that? Because when Jalen Hurts wanted to leave Alabama, he wanted to go with Loxley to Maryland. Mm-hmm. Saban obviously stopped that and told him, listen, you need to go to Oklahoma because that guy is the best at developing quarterbacks. When you have the GOAT saying that, you know what Lincoln Riley can do. My point with Lincoln would always be, it doesn't matter what quarterback you have. It doesn't matter that LSU had Burrow. It doesn't matter that Alabama had Bryce. It doesn't matter that Ohio State had Stroud. Like, none of that matters if you can't stop anybody. And they didn't. The thing that I think turns me off so much from USC and Lincoln Riley is Lincoln never said anything about Caleb Williams' nails. You notice how he hasn't done or didn't do that against Tulane. My question ultimately would be, does he have a stronghold on his programs to where he just lets his players do whatever he wants? I've heard a lot of stories about Lincoln Riley about just being like, it's all about my offense, and not talking about defense. And if that's the truth, Joe, he will never win a national title. Think about this. How many Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks or candidates does he have to have before him not at least playing for, right? Like, just playing for a national championship before we start calling him overrated? Like, that part I don't get. Every big game he coaches in, Joe, over the last 2 seasons, he's 2-6. Yeah. He's 2-6. That is not acceptable. I mean, how do you know what Nick Saban or Kirby Smart or whoever it would have been what they would kill to have quarterbacks like that he's had?
And to develop him as quickly as he's done it. I mean, I feel like the ultimate show of how good he is as a quarterback developer.
Yes.
Yeah, because Jalen, everyone was just saying he was a running back at the time when he left.
I'm old enough to remember when he would go into SEC stadiums all the time and light them up through the air. They said that because he was a black man with dreads. Let's call it what it is. He still threw for 65% of his passes. Don't tell me that he was a bad thrower and he just got to a Super Bowl. Calm down, Cheech.
Well, now he's developed and he's a really good, very good football player, and he fits perfectly in that Eagles offense. But I also think that the one, to answer your question, like how soon are we starting to call him overrated? I mean, I think that we're starting to turn the page on that discussion. We're starting to turn the page in being willing to start that conversation. I think those that are really plugged in and pay attention to the college football landscape are aware that this guy is overrated, that he is not he is not in the upper echelon in the top 5 of national championship capable of winning coaches.
No, Joe, I'm going to be honest. Not only does he not get in my top 5, well, we didn't do coaches, we did programs. Not only is he not in my top 5, I don't know if I put him in my top 8.
I'd have to think of who I would rank ahead of him, but there's enough coaches out there that have competed in or won national championships that he would deserve to be over.
Here's the ones off the top of my head that I'd put. You ready? Some of these you won't like. Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Dabo Swinney. You're gonna hate this one.
Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly.
He's got 2 national championship games, so it's
look, and I'm gonna tell you this. Mac Brown. I mean, listen. They're not that. I get that Mac hasn't had a lot of great years at North Carolina, but what does it matter? He's still a national championship winning coach. He's still gotten the 2 of them. I can name 2 more that I like more. You want me to tell you the truth? I don't know if I wouldn't put Harbaugh ahead of him. I mean, Harbaugh has had more success at 2 programs than what Lincoln has had so far.
He still yet to win a national championship is where I'm a little wary to.
But he did it at Stanford, Joe. He did it with the damn tree. Okay, so I would even put Harbaugh in that discussion. Maybe you could debate for 7. Maybe you can debate for 7. I will tell you another one that you won't like. Due to his history, and I know that you hate this guy, Jimbo still has won 79% of his games. Joe, 79% of his games. Lincoln Riley's like at 84, but it doesn't.
Well, he's also won a national championship game too, so which is why you have to give him a little bit more credit than Lincoln.
You're damn right. And you know what Jimbo doesn't do? What Jimbo doesn't get credit for? Dude, look at the games against LSU, Alabama. I don't remember the last time if they played Georgia. You know what what doesn't happen to them? They don't get blown out. Now, the thing for me, and we're about to transition into this.
Yeah.
The biggest, and I'm talking about the biggest hurdle that Lincoln Riley has goes up north into Oregon. Because on a spooky Halloween night in Eugene, anything can happen. Buddy, I'm going to tell you this. If Dan Lanning wins the Pac-12 in year 2 and gets to a playoff before Lincoln Riley gets to 1, watch my reaction then. I'm going to get blocked by every USC fan known to man.
I can't wait for that day.
Lindell White is going to ban me.
Oh, it's definitely going to happen. I can't wait for that to happen because we would both be in that same boat of pushing against USC. But I think we are equally Oregon supporters. I think that right. Well, no, it's not so much hate Oregon. It's just I'm saying that you and I both speak very positively of Oregon on this show. I don't think we've spoken negatively once on this show.
Yeah, because of their head coach. He actually knows what the hell he's doing defensively. And you know what he does? You know what Dan does? I don't know the offensive side of play calling. Let me get out of the way.
And he hired Kenny Dillingham, who's now head coach. And then the guy he pulled from UTSA is another up-and-coming bright mind in the offensive sphere. So, and Zachary Neel is going to be joining us really soon to talk to us about Oregon and their outlook for 2023.
All right, so let's do this. Let's talk about our good friends over at BetOnline. That's betonline.ag. Guys, we're back in 51 seconds. Zachary Neel joins us next. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag.
All right, now joining us on the show, we've got Zachary Neel of Ducks Wire of USA Today and also the host of Going Long the Oregon Ducks podcast on the Believe Network. Zach, we really appreciate you coming on the show. We're doing a little bit of a week-by-week preview of the 2023 season for a lot of the bigger programs. So it's great to have you on to talk about expectations for the Ducks.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, I heard a little bit of the conversation before I came in, and I'm fired up to join this one.
So, Zach, let's start off with the most pressing question. You ready?
Yes.
Is Bo Nix going to win a Heisman? Hell no,
I mean,
he ain't going to win a Heisman. Don't you say he's going to win. No, I'm just joking. So let me ask you
smart money would say no. Yes, the smart money would say no.
All right, so let's talk about this. You do have a new offensive coordinator. Let's start here. Let's start on the offense as we get into all of this. Look, last year Oregon, I think, did surprise some people. They got blown out by Georgia, but in the game one. But look, first game under Dan Lanning. I mean, what did you really expect? Did you really expect to beat them? I don't really think the national champions were going to play around with anybody. But Bo Nix, Dan Lanning, this team, they still fought. They still emerged. They still had some really good games. You do lose your offensive coordinator, but Will Stein, a guy that was at Louisville, he's a really young guy, really good offense and young offensive coordinator. I guess through this spring and through this team, what have you seen so far that you like from the offensive side with the Ducks?
We really haven't seen too much yet. I mean, so Oregon, they had 2 spring practices, and then they went on spring break. They actually resumed spring practice tomorrow. So we'll get more of a chance to see over this next few weeks what this offense looks like. But on paper, it looks like they should be better. Well, I don't know if I should say better, but they should be pretty good. You got Bo Nix coming back for another year. Obviously, a lot of people think that he's going to be as good as Leo was last year, if not a little bit better. I think that, there's some people that say maybe he could regress a little bit, and last year was an outlier season. I don't know. We need to see him a little bit more because he had a lot working for him last year. Like you said, Kenny Dillingham, who he knew from Auburn, he had a really, really veteran offensive line with actually 4 of those starting offensive linemen are gone now. So you got a pretty much remade offensive line, a new offensive line coach, new offensive coordinator. A lot of people saying, he's a Heisman favorite. Yes, he is. Is he going to win the Heisman? I don't know. I just need to see what he can do with this new offense so far. But they've got the pieces around him. They've got a really talented offensive line that we haven't seen what they look like yet. Really talented pieces. They've got a great running back room, great receiver room. I think offensively they're going to be pretty good. But just like last year, the defense is going to be what carries this team, and if they can't stand up like they didn't last year, it could be a relatively disappointing season if you consider the high expectations. Disappointing is in 2 to 3 losses, not 6 losses.
So you, as a former Rhody Ram football player, I have to ask about this to get this out of the way. You guys pulled the Johnny Cornelius from the portal, who was the top offensive tackle recruit that was available out there. Very talented kid. Very athletic. I think he's a little raw, but in your opinion, how impactful do you think that addition of a Johnny Cornelius to play that potentially right tackle spot for the Ducks next season?
I think it's huge. I mean, I talked to a couple people in the program that said that his presence in the locker room was so massive before they even got on the field and saw his talent. Just that he's really a grown up and has some experience in that locker room, and is really, because it's a relatively young team. I mean, you look at the other side of the ball, or other side of the offensive line. Former 5-star offensive tackle Josh Connolly, who was the number 1 offensive tackle in the 2022 class, he's projected to be the left tackle. And if you've got a Johnny over at right tackle, he can kind of help him along a little bit. Obviously, he doesn't have that experience at the Power 5 level, but he knows how to play football. He's been in locker rooms before. He can kind of really be a leader of that group. And like I said, you got a new offensive line coach because Adrian Klim, who was the offensive line coach, went to the NFL with the New England Patriots. So they brought a young guy in too for the new offensive line coach. So a lot of moving pieces, but like I said, they've got the talent to be really good. We just need to kind of see them put it together.
Zachary Neel joining us. Zach or Zachary? What would you, or does
either one? Zach okay. Is fine.
All right, I'm just too southern and too slow to say the full name. Zach. I'll put that on me. So Zach, you bring in an interesting dude, a guy that I think that us in the Southeastern Conference have followed for a long time, and Jordan Burch.
Yeah.
How massive is that for Oregon, just in general? Okay, like you have a talent that more than, and I know Joe's going to hate me for saying this, but he will be a top 10 NFL draft talent. What what's the impact of Dan Lanning being able to recruit and get a guy like that out of the portal?
It's huge. One, I mean, so there's the on-field impact and then kind of what it says in the recruiting world as well. But I'll start with the on-field. This is, I mean, obviously the biggest transfer portal player they landed this year, just because you look at where it comes on the field. I mentioned earlier, Oregon's defense, I mean, we can just say it, they were bad last year. They were, bottom half of the league, if not bottom 10% of the nation in most metrics. They were terrible at rushing the passer. They had, I forget how many sacks they had, but it was ranked 110th or something like that in the nation. I mean, it was bad. And because of that lack of pass rush, the secondary was terrible, because you can't ask these cornerbacks and safeties to cover for 6-7 seconds and have success, especially when you're in the Pac-12 and you're dealing with quarterbacks like Michael Penix, Caleb Williams, Cam Rising. I mean, you're going to get diced up like that. So they went into the portal and they addressed that. They got the number one edge rusher that was available. Someone who, I mean, you saw him at South Carolina. He's a solid player, and I think that he can be really, really good with the right coaching. And like you said, this is the recruiting aspect of it is just really impressive, because this is someone that Dan Lanning recruited hard when he was down at Georgia, and he was one of his main recruiters and wanted him in Georgia, and he didn't get him, but he came up to Oregon and he kind of waited a little bit, 2 years, and said, hey, why don't you come up here over to the Pacific Northwest and join me up here to see what you can do. So it kind of starts this new trend where Oregon, they had a top 10 class in 2023, but they also missed out on a top 5 class because they had several 5 stars that they probably finished second for a lot of them. And we've talked about that. Hey, in this new transfer portal era, that may not be the worst thing, because look at Jordan Birch. Dan Lanning finished second for him, but he ended up getting him in the end, because, a lot of these kids, they may not commit somewhere.
You never know what Peyton Bowen would do, right? Like to your point.
That was a mess.
I mean, Peyton Bowen in 2 years could be in the.
I was just saying.
No, you're
I didn't
fine.
mean to interrupt you.
You're fine. Peyton Bowen is a perfect example. In 2 years, he could say, hey, I don't like Oklahoma. Where should I go? Oh, I liked Oregon before. Maybe I'll like him again. So it's that type of thing that Jordan Birch really showed. That.
Say I'm going to Notre Dame and then just go to Oregon. Do you think he'll do something like that?
Probably.
I don't know.
Joe's a big Notre Dame fan, so I had to troll him a little bit.
Which is, it still stings, and I was upset when he picked Oregon, but weird to know that he's going to Oklahoma now. But speaking of defensive backs for the Ducks, though, you're losing Christian Gonzalez, who was one of the best corners in the country and in the conference last year. He's going to be, I believe, at least a top 20 pick at the bare minimum in this draft class. Yeah. Who is next up in that secondary to take over for a very well-coached defense, typically in the history of Dan Lanning leading these groups?
That's a really good question. We don't quite know. I mean,
don't boost his ego. Don't tell him.
I mean, there's a theme on this defense right now that there's talent, but we haven't seen it yet. There's a lot of unproven talent. Triquez Bridges was the other starting cornerback alongside Christian Gonzalez last year. He's probably going to be, the lockdown corner this year, but he definitely needs to improve if he's going to be that, cornerback one and that lockdown defender. There's a couple guys on the roster that were former 5 stars that were really good prospects coming up, but we haven't seen it on the field yet. They haven't really popped yet. They got Kyrie Jackson, a cornerback transfer from Alabama. Hopefully he can be someone that steps up for them. But, like I said, we're going to learn over these next few weeks of spring ball who really steps up and who can have that impact, because they definitely have some holes to fill in that defense. And cornerback is maybe number one, because you lose a guy like Christian Gonzalez. I mean, he was an electric player and he was a fantastic cornerback. So losing him really hurt.
So a guy that I kind of really watched a lot was Tysheem Johnson. Okay, the guy coming in, played at Ole Miss and probably was one of their better athletes that he had back there. Do you see a trend in the pack? I don't know how to ask this without being rude, okay? And I don't take this the wrong way. But we just got done talking about USC. USC went into the portal and got five of their top transfer portal guys coming from the SEC. Oregon's not that far off. Do you see a little bit of a trend in the portal? These coaches in the pack are just going to get some of these SEC guys? Because usually in the SEC, it's not from in conference. It's from everywhere. But in the pack, when you go down it, it's normally guys coming from the USC or, like Joe said, a mid-major or an FCS school that guys just really good. Have you seen a little bit of an uptick of former SEC players going out to the Pac?
I think, yeah, it's a nice trend that started to build. I don't know that coaches look in the portal and say, hey, if they played SEC ball, we're going to get them. They're going to try and find someone that fits their scheme. But, I mean,
Right.
Dan Lanning is going
to
Well, no, I mean, when you talk about the top 7 transfer portal guys outside of the guys from Colorado, I'm taking them out for just a minute. 7 of the top 10 came from the SEC. It's why I'm asking, like, seriously.
It's a fair question.
Yeah. Well, you look at some of the top players, and I think it is kind of coincidence. Well, not coincidence that they came from the SEC, but let's be real. That's where the best players play. And so Dan Lanning spent years down the SEC at Georgia and Alabama. He knows the type of players that he's getting, and he's recruited those players. And now that he's able to bring them out of the SEC, bring them to the Pac-12, I'm not surprised that he's gotten several SEC players. I mean, Bo Nix as well from Auburn last year. So yeah, right. I'm not surprised that it's happened that way. I think that maybe it's a trend that we see going forward. Maybe SEC players, it's not that they don't have success with those teams and they want new places, but I don't know. It's going to be something to watch going forward.
No, Ole Miss's secondary just absolutely sucked, and that kid needed to get out of there so he could actually get drafted. One more for me, and then I'll kick it over to Joe.
Okay.
In reference to Oregon, is this the year that you think that they could make the playoff? I know it's a very a loaded question. I know you say you got to find out a lot about the guys that you're getting you're replacing. Outside of Washington, so just FYI, Zach, I am a Michael Penix Jr. Stan account. If you see it on AYS, I will back a lefty throwing quarterback all the live long day. Aaron Noland is a kid that's in this recruiting class that I'm in love with.
I like him.
Oh, I was never mind. I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. Do you think that Oregon has the most potential coming out of the Pac right now? Can they dethrone Utah?
They can, yes. I mean, I don't know that they have a better. If I was going to say, would they make it this year or would they make it in a few years? I would say in a few years when you expand that playoff to 12 teams and you get the automatic Pac-12 champion in, that's when they have the best chance. But they absolutely can make it this year. I think that if they are able to stay healthy and if people play to the level that we expect them to, if Bo Nix does not regress a little bit, if the offense doesn't miss a beat going from Dillingham to Will Stein, if the offensive line, is as good as they can be and plays to the level that the talent is there and the offensive line coach is good, and if the defense can step up and have a pass rush and, defensively is going to win you the Pac-12 this year because, like you said, you've got Caleb Williams, you've got Michael Penix, you've got Cam Rising. I mean, there's going to be some of the best offenses in the nation this year in the Pac-12, and whoever can stop them or at least hold them under 40 points per game, that's who's going to win the Pac-12 this year. So everyone's kind of loading up on offense, but I think that I've liked what I've seen from Dan Lanning so far, trying to get a lot of defensive transfers and really bulk up that side of the ball because that's what's going to separate you in this league. Everyone can score. I mean, if you want to go out and have 70 to 70 games, you can do that any weekend in the Pac-12. But if your defense can step up and actually get some stops, I think that's going to give you the most success.
So last question I have, Zach, is in relation to Dante Moore, another recruit who kind of last second changed his mind. I really was really stunned that he picked UCLA. And it makes sense because he wants to play sooner rather than later. It's a better opportunity for maybe he even to play as a true freshman. But was there that same sense of shock and maybe surprise that he chose not to go to Oregon?
There was. It was definitely alleviated by the fact that Bo Nix announced, I think, 2 days later that he was returning for another year. But yeah, he was the highest rated quarterback recruit to ever, commit to the Ducks. Obviously didn't sign.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was
Mariota?
ideas. Oh, Mariota was like a 3-star. Justin Herbert was like a 3-star. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, they were nobody's.
Damn, they missed on that one.
I mean, the Ducks have never had a 5-star quarterback sign. I mean, the highest one is a high-end 4-star. So,
was that Butterfield that was the high-end 4-star?
It was Ty Thompson who's on it right now.
Got it.
So, yeah, Duck fans were definitely frustrated and hurt by that one, and I think rightfully so. I mean, you get one of the arguably the top passer in the class, committed to you, and then last second he goes to one of your rivals. That definitely hurts. And not even your rival, but the coach who used to be your coach, who left you for the NFL after having such success at Oregon. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of, I don't want to say bad feelings, but it's a little bit murky. I know that when Oregon plays UCLA, does Oregon play the UCLA this year? I forget. If they ever play them down the road, or if they met in the Pac-12 championship, that'd be a fun game to watch, because I know that there's some feelings about Dante Moore.
I don't think Dante Moore will paint his fingernails, though. I lied. Last one for me. Yeah, I went there. Last one for me. Deion Sanders, prom. What's the feeling? Yeah. So you cover the Oregon every day. So what's the feeling around prom? I mean, is that a game now that you got to pay? Look. Everybody's saying, oh, well, they still really stink. They did stink last year. This isn't last year. You brought in 41 new kids. 41 new kids. That's a completely different team. When you look at them in the preseason and you look at them now, what's your thoughts about Colorado, and if Oregon did have to ultimately play them?
They're exciting. They're definitely fun to watch, and I love all the storylines, and it kind of props up the Pac-12. But I don't think that they're going to compete for a Pac-12 title this year. I don't have many worries. I don't have any worries about that game in Week 4 with Oregon and Colorado. I can't wait for it because it's in Eugene. It's Primetime's first Pac-12 game. It's going to be highly covered. I'm sure it'll be on ESPN and like the noon window out west. It'll be fun to watch. But you can have those 41 new transfers, but that's not to say that they are going to mesh right away. And someone people say that Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback, that he's going to be, one of the best quarterbacks, and he belongs in that elite tier of Pac-12 quarterbacks this year. I don't think right away this year he does. I mean, you look at Cam Ward, the quarterback for Washington State, was an incredible player at Incarnate Ward the year before. And then he went to Washington State last year, and he had some flashes, but I mean, it took some time for him to get used to Power 5 football and playing in the Pac-12. And I think he'll be better this year, but I think we see something similar from Shedeur Sanders and a lot of the Colorado team. They've got great players, Travis Hunter, Cormani McLean. I can't wait to watch some of their pieces, but as an entire unit, I think it's going to maybe 2024 is when we see them start making some actual noise. But, I don't know that they have an incredibly long runway, because how long is Deion Sanders going to be there? I think 2025 at the longest, 2026 maybe.
It's true. It's a good point.
If he wins, let's just say hypothetically, let's say he has 6 wins year 1, 8 wins year 2, let's say 9 to 10 wins year 3, he's gone. And buddy, this is just me, just my opinion. If he goes 8 wins at Colorado year 2,
I think he's gone then.
He's gone.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to tell you something. As somebody who's lived in the South 33 years of my life, don't think that Mike Norvell won't get pushed out. I'm just listen, I mean, it's already been buzzing. They wanted to fire him and he won 9 games last year. That's how bad it's been. All right. Zach Neel's been our guest. Thank you so much for joining us. Zach, tell everybody where they can catch all your content, everything that you're doing, especially with Believe in Ducks.
Yeah, you can find me. You can listen to my podcast, the Going Long podcast on the Believe Podcast Network. I love it. I've had a lot of fun doing that. We actually just launched a few months ago, so we're still relatively young, but ramping up with the football season. Find me duckswire.usatoday.com. Follow me on Twitter at Zachary C. Neel, and keep up on the latest with the Ducks. Got a lot going on out here.
The only thing I'm going to tell you as you exit here, whatever you do on Twitter, you better back Angel Reese of LSU. That's all I'm going to tell you. That's all I'm going to tell you. We're Angel Reese.
I'm staying out of that entire conversation. I'm staying out of it.
All right,
Blake's trying to get everyone in trouble. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, that's Zach Neel. It was fantastic, bro. That was great.
Awesome.
That was great.
I told you, news stuff. We got a lot of good info on Oregon.
I'm going to tell you something. He started to worry me, though. About
what do you mean? Oh, with some of the – because he brought up some good points about the defense in the secondary, and I was like, I didn't really think about that. They're a little thin at some position groups.
And here's my counter argument to that, okay? Joe, they can't get any worse defensively in the Pac-12. They can't get any worse.
That's true. It's hard to replace a first-round pick corner, but that's absolutely true.
I'm going to be honest. Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
Horseshit.
What do you mean?
as someone who's covered what they call DBU horseshit, because collectively, you can be better when he's out. Because let me tell you why. Because you have to call and scheme up things differently and better. Because now you don't have to say, "Oh, well, Gonzalez is on the outside," right? And I agree with him. Like they got what's the kid's name? Uga. Okay, they got him. Then they got Jordan Birch. If they can get a pass rush as a unit, that DB room will be better. Okay. He just worried me a little bit. I don't know if I like taking Utah anymore. Give me Washington. Give me Michael Penix Jr. I'm done. He sold me. That's all I need.
That's not the outcome I was hoping for, but
I'm not coming off this Michael Penix Jr. Stan account stuff. I'm not doing it.
I don't know why, but I hope that when we do our Washington preview, is he excited to talk about Angel Reese? I think that's what
No, he said, tell Joe to stop talking about the football game. Those are exact words.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ben.
I guess it's a sign and a signal. Anyway, continue.
No, I was just going to say that I hope that the Washington pundit we bring on gives you more cause for concern for Washington after you've been blindly optimistic for their future.
Tell me a time that I've been wrong.
I'd have to think about it. I'm sure I could come up with a few times.
My point. If it can't come off the top of the head, then all right. We will see y'all Wednesday.
We're back.
Okay. Until then, we're going. We're out of here. Like and share. Hit the comment button. Hit the subscribe button. All of it. We'll see y'all Wednesday. We're gone. Peace.